Every great marketer has been faced with this moment, an opportunity to exhibit bravery in the midst of uncertainty, or to take a risk on something they truly believed in. The Brave Marketer podcast features today's most progressive marketers and uncovers the brave marketing moments that have shaped their careers and the brands they've influenced. Hosted by Brave Software and Never Stop Marketing, and me, your host, Donnie DeVoren. Together we'll discover the decision-making process and mindset work that led to their success. Welcome to another episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. We're going to introduce you to what our guest calls the 3 Ds. The fact that work is difficult, dangerous, and disruptive. But before we get into our episode today, I want to highlight our Brave Pick of the Week. So every episode we choose a brand that has run an ad campaign with Brave, and this week we're picking Treasurit. So if you're not familiar with Treasurit, it's basically a simple, secure file and sync and sharing for your business. Helps you store and share files and documents up in the cloud using an end-to-end encryption, and you can easily transfer it and access it anytime, anywhere. And Brave has been partnering with Treasurit to drive awareness and purchase intent and conversions for their product. And we've been running our sponsored image product, and Treasurit has seen a 6x post-campaign awareness and purchase intent grew by 40% in our Q1 test. So our ads are working very, very well for our advertisers, and Treasurit is a great example of that, and we've got permission to share that data with you. So now in this week's episode, you're going to meet John Nolan, and John is the managing director of Apex Content Ventures for Publicis Media, and he was actually a referral from Duncan, who talked about his Super Bowl ad for Fiverr. And John is based in London, and he works with broadcasters, which are supported by advertising, to provide solutions for funding and distributing content. And John was previously at Production Group All3Media, where he worked with agencies and advertisers to create content. So I think you'll find this episode really, really interesting because John goes a little bit into the history of his career and then really focuses on the 3 Ds of difficult, dangerous, and disruptive, which has really been a key center point of his career. So now, with no further ado, here is the episode. John, welcome to the Brave Marketer podcast. We're really excited to have you on today. I think that you have a lot of interesting things to share with our audience on how you've been brave. So why don't we start actually with your career, because you spent a lot of time in broadcast media, moved over to the agency world about 4 years ago, and just that in itself of going from something that you know so well to the agency world is also brave. So can you talk about that decision back then?
Yeah, brave is a really good word for it. I think it was the right time. I think my broadcast career, if you could call it that, is more of probably a lifestyle than a career. I was paid to point cameras at things. I was paid to start with a blank sheet of paper, fill that blank sheet of paper in with an idea, and then realize that into moving images. And then I suddenly started to realize that somebody had to pay for that to happen. And so I became obsessed with the business models behind how content is funded. I want to let you into a little secret. All advertising funds content. That's been the business model of networks around the world since the creation of television. And so I became really interested in the ways in which the traditional world of content production, programming, interacts with the world of advertising, marketing, communications. And it's a really interesting perspective when you look at networks, because networks have a church and state approach to programming and commercial. In the US, for instance, one's based in the East Coast and one's based in the West Coast. It's not just church and state, it's different time zones, and they have different P&Ls. And there's a really good reason why that's the case. Audiences want great content. Audiences are free to decide what they want to watch. And the crisis of funding stuff, where I went round with a begging bowl, begging networks to, hey, I've got this great idea, will you fund me to make it? Suddenly started to take hold of me. So the move over to Publicis was really easy, actually, because I've been given an opportunity to work with an agency and help fund content for networks in order to create bigger, better advertising opportunities for Publicis clients. So it's the same knowledge, but it's somewhere where that knowledge is taken differently. So I don't think it's a brave move. I think it's a natural progression.
So getting into Brave, you coined this 3Ds phrase, which is difficult, dangerous, and disruptive for the content that you put together. How'd you come up with this kind of catchphrase?
Give me a blank sheet of paper and I'll color it in eventually with something. I think there are 3 projects I'm very fond of, and I like to refer as the things I'm proudest of. And I think they're basically defined by being difficult, dangerous, and disruptive. But I'm capable of undermining my own phrase. So I'd say the difficult one was I was working with Shell. And we created a series for Discovery Networks where we took the actor Tom Hardy to the Siberian desert at -60, and we took Henry Cavill to the Chinese desert at +60, and we took Adrian Brody to the Malaysian jungle in the same car. And it literally was a matter of life and death. And that is difficult and dangerous. And the idea there is that the only thing keeping you alive was the oil in the engine. We died. So I'd say that's what viewers want in programming, is something that is not ordinary, something that has big Hollywood superstars doing things out of the ordinary. You wouldn't expect these Hollywood legends to be at -60 in the Siberian desert, where you will die if you're out there for more than an hour. And I think dangerous. I made a live television commercial a few years ago for Channel 4 in the UK. And it involved throwing 16 people out of an aircraft live on television to spell the word Honda as they fell to earth. The thing about danger is only dangerous if you don't consider the risks. So actually, at no time was it ever really dangerous. It was always apparently dangerous. At no time ever was Tom Hardy or Henry Cavill or Adrian Brody in any real danger, because we had a safety team. And actually, if these things were difficult, then I certainly couldn't do them. But it takes the right team to put together to make it look difficult. Actually, I think brave is probably a good word that you've coined for this kind of approach. And to me, disruptive is doing things out of the ordinary. So I've been in the lucky position where I've been able to help launch a couple of TV channels for brands. I was part of the team embedded inside BBH that launched a TV channel for Audi cars. It was a 24-hour linear, 7 days a week TV channel.
Wow.
And I think that kind of, if you're going to do what everybody else is doing, why bother doing it? What can you do that's different? And so that's why I say, difficult, dangerous, disruptive is... The difficult's not really difficult because if I can do it, then someone else can. It's not really dangerous because we've managed the risk. And disruptive, I think, is the really important one. Why would you do what everyone else is doing?
Yeah. And where do these ideas come from? They come from you, from a team?
I'd like to say it's all about me, but it never is. It's always part of a team. So all of these projects, we're working with creative agencies and media agencies, which have creative teams. All of them are working with broadcasters who also have a point of view in terms of what happens in their channels. So with Shell Driven to Extremes, that was with JWT, with Shell themselves, and with Discovery Networks. The Honda commercial was obviously with Honda, but also with Starcom, who were the agency for Honda at the time, and with Channel 4, who were the broadcaster. And an Audi channel was with the Audi client and with BBH and with the team at BBH in London to help put that together. And I think the one thing I learned really early on at film school was take chances, learn, collaborate, bring out the best working people. You bring out your best work when you are part of a team. There's no point sitting in a room looking at that blank sheet of paper and having writer's block. You unblock the creativity by talking to people. I always say, look who you're in the room with, look who you're working with, and try and get the best out of them together. That's where it comes from. But of course, it was all about me.
Yeah, you should take some credit. You put your name on.
I was definitely in the room. Yeah,
yes.
I was definitely in the room when these things happened. Yeah, that's the credit I'll take.
Yeah, and it's a good point that you bring up. It's like people listening to this and say they should start thinking about examples in their own careers, in their own work that they're doing right now. And I love those 3 letters because someone could take a look and say, all right, this project that I'm working on, it's good, but it's kind of easy. How do I make it more difficult? And if you make it more difficult, it's probably going to be better. And if you make it more dangerous, if you make it more disruptive, it will probably be better too. So I guess what other advice would you give to somebody who's working on any type of project in the marketing world and any one of the 3Ds? How do you just instill more of that into any project?
What you leave behind is your own footprints. You get to decide, and if you're not in control of your own decisions, then you've not made the right decision to begin with. I'd say a backwards compliment that's been said of me is I'm not over encumbered by a sense of self-doubt. But I think a sense of self-confidence is really important. If you don't have the self-confidence in your own decisions, then how do you expect other people to believe in what you're saying? And I will also say surround yourself with good people. Look for the people that bring out the best in you as well. And we've all been in a position where we've been firing off each other. That's the magic. That's the art. That's the thing we strive for. And I think that's what brings great work. There's a lot of people who will be very cynical about that, what I've just said there. But I truly believe it. What I do now is I help fund content. And somebody said to me, how do you decide what content to fund? And I said, well, that's a silly question because I'm not going to decide. You are. Because you're only going to bring me the content that you love. And if you love it, and the network loves it, then why wouldn't I fund it? But if you're asking me to fund the number 6 piece of content on a list of 5, then why would I fund it? Right. It's a really obvious phrase is we need to be doing the work we love. Because if we're not, then why are we doing bleh? Right. I don't ever want to do bleh.
Right. We're not put on this planet to do work that we don't enjoy. We should do the stuff that we love and we're proud of.
I hope so. Hey, I've done a lot of rubbish as well. It's doing the rubbish that drives you to realize, to understand that I don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah. John, I took a look at that Honda commercial that you filmed live. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I obviously didn't see it live, but I watched it on YouTube. Can you share for the audience the background of that and just and how you pulled it off?
Yeah. So at the time, I was the producer of a motorsport series here in Europe, the Formula One motor racing series. And so I had quite a lot of experience of big live outside broadcasts using radio link cameras. And I'd also been involved helping to create the Red Bull Air Race series. So I had a lot of experience of working with live TV signals from airplanes. So I was approached by Channel 4 who wanted to do this live commercial with skydivers. I was lucky enough to meet a director called Tim Van Summeren and then the creative team at Channel 4 Creative, and we put together the idea of spelling out HONDA as the skydivers fell to earth. We rehearsed that 20 times over 2 days because wow. Here you go. As a TV producer, I cannot tell the pilot of an aeroplane when it's safe to take off. They must make that decision. As a TV producer, I cannot tell the lead skydiver when I want them to jump. However, I had a 3-minute window in a live television network in which to pull this off. So we had a code which we rehearsed 1 million times where I said to the pilot, if you were to make the decision to take off, now would be a good time. And then we had a timing thing where we could change the lighting in the airplane to say, if you are happy to jump, then now would be a good time. Because we had to time getting the aircraft to the right place within the right time frame to be live on television for the jump to happen. The scariest thing was you can manage anything. The one thing you can't manage is the weather. An hour before the time slot of the live television commercial, it was raining.
Oh, no.
With half an hour to go, the sun came out. Everything was on our side. It was
amazing.
That's what I say about, was it dangerous? It's only dangerous if you don't have the experience of working with live aircraft. It's only dangerous and difficult if you don't have the right people around you. We had the world formation skydiving team jumping out of an aircraft. They knew what they were doing. It's only difficult if your health and safety expert in television isn't also an aeronautic engineer. Mm-hmm. So you put the right team together, then dangerous, difficult, and disruptive, it becomes easy. And I think that's where you're around bravery. Bravery is not about doing the impossible. It's about building the right team and the right tools in order to make the right things happen.
Yeah, and that commercial is, you can't do it during the Super Bowl because that'd be very expensive to have 3 minutes of time during the Super Bowl, but it is better than Super Bowl quality. It reminds me of our interview and how we were introduced. Duncan, when he was talking about his Super Bowl ad, he said, why can't people make Super Bowl quality ads for all TV commercials? Why do you got to wait for the Super Bowl? And you're a great example of that. Like that was on Channel 4, not during the Super Bowl, but it was better quality than Super Bowl.
It was a primetime commercial in a center break in a program at 8:15, and the whole idea and the whole campaign was to drive traffic to the commercial breaks and to make advertising relevant.
Right.
And I think Duncan's point and your point is absolutely correct. There's a joke in advertising, the commercials are better than the TV programs. They still need to be.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that the content world, the programming world has upped its game. We're in a golden age of content. There's a challenge. We need better advertising. We need more engaging advertising because content is going to continue to get bigger and better funding. The content world and the advertising world is in partnership, and that often gets forgotten.
So it's great that we identify your brave marketing moments. Thank you for that. So our world, our marketing world is changing every day, every year. Obviously, privacy is a big thing that comes up a lot in the Brave browser world. But what kind of threats or challenges do you see in your world?
That's a great question because that is the heart of what I do for a living. Is I see my role here at the Publicis Group as dealing with this massive consumer change in the consumption of content. And if you'd have stood on a platform 5 years ago and predicted the growth of subscription services.
Consumers are going to pay $10 a month just for HBO or just for Disney products?
Yeah, it sounds nuts still when you say it. But the kind of growth of that direct payment system, and those services are great, by the way. Those services are amazing. And the content they're creating, we are in a golden age of content creation now. We're all running out of hours in the day to watch the stuff we have to watch because everyone else is watching it, and it's fantastic. But we're also in a world of great change where, for me, the advertiser-funded services are being outbid on content by the subscription services. And I work for an advertising marketing communications business. So how can I help my partners in the broadcast world create bigger, better, more content? And there's a million reasons why we're in this position. But for the first time in history, the big ad-supported networks are being outbid in talent negotiations because the talent is going to the big global services who can pay global prices rather than one country price. So a network operates in one country. So therefore, the price it can afford to pay represents the country it's based in. Whereas the big global super streaming services operate globally. And they can afford to pay for content and they can recoup their investment in every country in the world. And I'd say that's the biggest challenge to a world supported by advertising is, and to let that secret again, advertising funds all content. That's what it does. And so if as a business I can help platforms that carry advertising create bigger, better, more content, then that's a better position for all advertisers.
Yeah. So advertising funds all content, but then we have these services that have no advertising like the Netflix and the Disney. So connect the dot there.
Yeah, but I also don't think it's as binary as that moving forward. I think we're moving into a kind of multiple and mixed economy where the business model of funding content is not going to get in the way. And we're already getting these freemium services where you can pay X and watch some advertising or pay Y and have no advertising. I think you're going to get a service where you're going to have the must-see content that you have to watch live, and you'll pay to access it with subscription, and it will carry advertising, and you won't have a choice. And if you want to see something first, you will pay and it will carry advertising for the premium. And then you will have just subscription with no advertising a couple of days later. And then a couple of days later, just advertising. Don't worry about the subscription. And there'll be different levels of access. And I think also it's a misnomer to define content on its funding methods. Nobody ever said, I watched a great deficit-funded matrix approach bank-financed documentary the other day. So the content funding mechanism is not the defining feature, and it's very important for me to recognize that. It's what's the best content and the stuff people love. That's what I'm interested in.
Anything super interesting that you're working on right now?
Oh, no, I wish I could tell you. Yes. So no, I can't tell you. What I can say is I'm really excited by the fact we've been given permission to do the right thing. And there's a big growth in purpose-driven programming. I'm funding a series around gender equality in the US.
Got it.
I'm funding a series around toxic masculinity and sport here in the UK. I'm funding a series, an amazing documentary. And the reason I'm not going to name drop the names of the documentaries at the moment is these documentaries belong to the networks and the producers, not to me. I'm the funding partner. But I'm doing this amazing thing looking at gender equality in the 1970s. And so you have these activists who are now in their 70s themselves. You have this fantastic 16 millimeter old school film footage and these amazing grandmas. And you think, hang on, how was this only 20, 30 years ago? Because the views are those from the Stone Age. And so I think the exciting bit is being given permission to get involved in stuff that's really exciting. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, it's a good segue into one of our final questions is, what are your best hopes for the future of marketing and advertising? Where do you want to see our industry go?
I think the future is that mixed economy of which I've mentioned. And I don't think there are silos of one way works. I think a plurality of different methods is the future. I think some of the challenges for advertising is that transparency and truth and trust. And as a program maker, you have a covenant with your viewers of tell the truth. And there's been a number of kind of exposures where that wasn't always the case. And so I think the future of advertising is around a kind of mixed economy. I think subscription has a place. The subscription services are amazing, but I think they have a place at the table that they share with advertising moving forward.
So I think I know the answer to this one, but we like to ask our guests. You wouldn't be where you are today if you hadn't done or started X.
I wouldn't be where I was today had I not met a man called John Sickle. And John taught me a great deal about honesty. John taught me a great deal about the importance of learning. And at the time I was training to be a director, a film and television director. And I know nothing about lighting. And the thing John taught me is that if you're going to have a conversation with a lighting director, you better know about lenses and lighting, and so you can have a conversation with them. And so the important thing I learned from John is the empathy to learn what the other person needs to know. Mm-hmm. And I think as a producer, that kind of ability to learn from the people you're working with is absolutely critical. So I wouldn't be where I am today without meeting John Sickle.
Amazing. And finally, can you nominate another brave marketer that we should have on this show?
I'm going to nominate two.
Okay.
They're known as the Marks, Mark Boyd and Mark Eves. They run an agency called Gravity Road. Mark Boyd based in New York, Mark Eves based in the UK. They are crazy in their creativity.
They have the 3Ds?
They invented them. I like the Marks because they're fun, they're decent and honest, they're hardworking. And if they don't like something, they're going to tell you, but they'll tell you in a way which helps you make it better.
Beautiful. Sounds like perfect guests that we should have, and probably two people that have exhibited bravery. On that note, thank you so much, John, for coming on our podcast, The Brave Marketer. It was so great to hear the stories from your commercial world over to your advertising world. So thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. I really enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you did as well. I thought the Honda example, if you haven't Googled that, and I think you'll be really impressed with the people jumping out of a plane and spelling Honda. And I think today's episode also gave us some really good recommendations and insight into thinking differently in our roles. And we all have an opportunity to make our job more difficult, which we may not want to do, or more dangerous or disruptive, which maybe in the moment is taking a big, chance and a risk. But isn't that what brave marketing is all about? It's doing something different, and I think the 3Ds really epitomize that. If you liked what you heard today and found it valuable, it'd be really super helpful for us if you took 2 minutes and left us a short review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. Every review helps in growing and getting our show to more ears. And on one final note, if you have a brand or product or service that you'd like to get in front of Brave's 30 million users, please do just send us an email at adsales@brave.com, And remember to tell us you're a podcast listener, and we're going to unlock one of two perks for you. So if your budget is under $10,000 a month, we'll bump you up to the top of our self-serve waiting list. And if your budget is $10,000 or more a month, you'll qualify for a 25% podcast listener discount. And again, all you got to do is email adsales@brave.com. And thank you so much for listening. This podcast series is brought to you by Brave, of course, the world's first global ad platform built on privacy. And we will see you next week.